Is that this House do now adjourn. Mr. George Galloway.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I have an interest in Pakistan. I hold the highest civil award the country can bestow, the Hilal-e-Qaid-e-Azam, given to me at the end of the 1980s for my work for the restoration of democracy in Pakistan at the end of a previous bout of military dictatorship supported at the time by the then British government. I also hold the second highest civil award in Pakistan, the Hilal-e-Pakistan, given to me for my work on behalf of the rights of the people of Kashmir. And I worked until the military overthrow of democracy in Pakistan closely with all the democratic parties in that country. It's worth establishing a timeline on this debate, Madam Deputy Speaker. General Musharraf, as we used to call him, when he seized power in a military coup in 1999, before we began to call him President Musharraf, an office to which he appointed himself, came to power having exiled and imprisoned and then exiled the democratic political leaders in the country. In 2002, he held a referendum, which was an extraordinary one even by the standards of Eastern potentates, in which he won 97% of the vote, in a referendum which was described by Transparency International as blatantly rigged, as were the accompanying parliamentary elections in 2002, described by all international and uninterested observers. He made a promise at that time that he would cease to be the Chief of the Army's General Staff, a promise on which he has reneged. In September of 2006, Amnesty International issued a detailed report on human rights abuses in Pakistan and alleged, and I'm quoting, that the Musharraf government is responsible for violating a wide array of human rights. These include torture, unlawful detention, enforced disappearance, extrajudicial execution, the unlawful transfer of persons to the United States and other countries, and arbitrary arrests. That was in September 2006. That's an important date, because 2 months later, in November of 2006, that's just over 6 months ago, the British Prime Minister visited President Musharraf, and this is what he said. He paid tribute to General Musharraf, and I quote, for symbolising the future for Muslim countries the world over. I'd like the House to just keep those words in its mind. He praised Musharraf, the military dictator of Pakistan, for, quote, symbolising the future for Muslim countries the world over, unquote. So let's see what's happened in Pakistan since the Prime Minister uttered those words. The Chief Justice, Iftikhar Chaudhry, for insisting on hearing cases of missing persons and objecting to the privatisation of a steel mill, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think we know who might have taken it over, perhaps New Labour's biggest donor, Mr. Mittal, who's given millions of pounds to the party opposite. The Chief Justice would have none of it and was told by President Musharraf that he must resign. He refused to resign. And on March 16th, just 3 months after Prime Minister Blair hailed Musharraf as symbolising the future for Muslim countries, the Chief Justice was supported by demonstrations throughout the country, by lawyers, civil society groups and opposition parties, which were savagely assailed by General Musharraf's armed forces. This included the first of many attacks on independent television stations. On April the 26th, the Chief Justice made a 26-hour-long journey by car from Islamabad to Lahore and was welcomed by vast crowds along the way. On May the 12th, the government of Sindh, which is a coalition government of Musharraf's King's Party and the MQM, led from London by a British citizen, Altaf Hussain, to whom I shall return later, laid siege to the city. The main thoroughfares were blocked. Lawyers and their supporters were attacked outside the Karachi bar with batons, and the MQM militants fired bullets indiscriminately into the peaceful demonstrators. 11 members of the Pakistan People's Party were killed. 10 members of the Justice Movement of Imran Khan, with whom I met today and who's meeting the leader of the opposition tomorrow. I'm not sure if the Minister will find time in his busy schedule to meet him, were wounded, as were scores of others. And last week, just 7 months after the Prime Minister said that Musharraf symbolised the future for Muslim countries around the world, all independent television stations were closed down and a draconian ordinance on the press was introduced. Human Rights Watch, an organisation oft quoted approvingly by Her Majesty's government, says this: as President Musharraf has arbitrarily amended the Pakistani constitution to strengthen the power of the presidency, marginalise elected representatives, formalise the role of the army in government, claimed military impunity for abuses, and these abuses have included extrajudicial killings, torture and arbitrary arrests. That's Human Rights Watch. In The Guardian today, the story of how these independent television stations have been taken off the air and journalists fired upon. One TV station, Aj TV, was attacked for 6 hours in Karachi during the unrest accompanying the Chief Justice of Pakistan's visit to the city. A large demonstration was tear-gassed, bullets were fired, batons used, rubber bullets used, television stations taken off the air, and 52 bullets fired into the television studio of Aj TV. The US State Department, I quote it because the United States government often acts in synchronicity with our own, says that the MQM, which is the power in Karachi, and I quote, has been widely accused of human rights abuses since its foundation 2 decades ago. And goes on, in the mid-1990s, the MQM was heavily involved, not was alleged to be, was heavily involved in the widespread political violence that racked Pakistan's southern Sindh province. 3 members of the Congress, led by Joseph Biden, another man close to New Labour, wrote the following letter just a few days ago to Condoleezza Rice. Dear Secretary Rice, we are witnessing a spiral of civil unrest and harshly suppressed protest in Pakistan. We ask that you publicly demand an immediate end to the violence and urge the government of Pakistan to commit to holding free and fair elections by the year's end. Nothing less will be acceptable from the government minister this evening. Joe Biden and his fellow senators say that President Musharraf's dismissal of the Chief Justice has sparked protests of tens of thousands, spearheaded by bar associations and supported by moderate political parties and civil society organisations. He says the violence in Karachi appears to show disturbing signs of collusion between the MQM and government forces, leading to the deaths and wounding of opposition party militants and other protesters. And they go on and they go on. They say in the final paragraph, the national interests of the United States and of Pakistan are both served by a speedy restoration of full democracy to Pakistan and by an end to state-sponsored intimidation, often violent, of Pakistani citizens protesting government actions in a legal and peaceful manner. We urge you to make a public appeal to this end and to raise these matters forcefully in your interactions with Pakistani government officials. Again, nothing less will be acceptable from the Treasury bench when the Minister comes to address the House this evening. But following my discussions with Imran Khan today, I want to indicate that the primary concern I have, and the primary concern of most Pakistanis living in Britain, is this: why is Altaf Hussain being allowed from a sofa in Edgware to conduct a terrorist campaign and a campaign of extortion of businesses and citizens in Sindh? And why was he given British citizenship? I want to ask the Minister tonight, and if he doesn't have the answer to hand, I would like him to write to me and tell me the answer to this question. Was Altaf Hussain ever refused British citizenship? And if he was refused British citizenship, what changed between that refusal and the granting of citizenship to him? It is an extraordinary thing, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the middle of a so-called war on terror, that a bloody reign of terror in a major Pakistani city, and there are millions of Pakistanis who are citizens of our own country, a terrorist cell is operating from Edgware in the form of the MQM. Every day, Altaf Hussain, a British citizen, addresses his puppets in Karachi, giving them instructions on how they should govern, including how they should handle peaceful demonstrations. Now, the Minister smiles smugly. He may think this is a small matter. But if this man, instead of being a stooge of President Musharraf, instead of being a stooge of a government allied to his own, if he were a hooked-handed, glass-eyed, ranting mullah, he would at best already be in Belmarsh, and at worst would be on a plane deported to the country where he has absconded from. Murder charges. This man is the godfather of Sindh, the godfather of Karachi, living high on the hog from the extortion of the citizens of Karachi. I really don't know why the Minister finds this funny. This is a serious matter. And the question that must be answered is, how long will the British government tolerate this situation that's occurring under their noses? And by the way, citizenship was given to Hussain under this government in 1999, and it's my belief that he was refused citizenship under the previous administration. So I want to know why he was given citizenship and why he's being allowed to operate with impunity in this way. Because the truth is, Madam Deputy Speaker, far from symbolizing the future for the Muslim countries around the world, General Musharraf crystallizes the problem which Western governments have in the Muslim countries around the world. We tell people that we're invading countries in order to defend democracy and liberty, but we support dictators who crush democracy and liberty as long as they do it in concordance with Western policy on other matters. You see, the slogan, "My enemy's enemy is my friend," is a deeply flawed one from which the government does not seem to have learned. They didn't read the novel Frankenstein to the end. Dr. Frankenstein created a monster, but he lost control of it, because you can't control monsters. Across the border in Afghanistan, we helped to create the monster of jihadism and Islamist fundamentalism, which became Bin Laden, became the Taliban, on the principle that my enemy's enemy was my friend. But Madam Deputy Speaker, as we're finding in Iraq, finding to some extent in Palestine, your enemy's enemy isn't always your friend. Sometimes your enemy's enemy is worse than your enemy. And by allying yourself with your enemy's enemy, making him your friend, you become complicit in the crimes that he commits. Nobody in the Muslim world can believe that this government is really interested in democracy and liberty in the Muslim world, so long as they're kissing Colonel Gaddafi in the tent at Sirte, the same Colonel Gaddafi who brought down the Lockerbie airliner, we were told, with the deaths of hundreds of people, the same Colonel Gaddafi who we said funded the IRA's bombing campaign in Britain through the 70s and the 80s, the same Colonel Gaddafi that we said shot down an English policewoman in a London square. Nobody can believe that Colonel Gaddafi deserves the kisses of the British Prime Minister. Nobody believes Colonel Gaddafi has changed, just that he has changed sides. Nobody believes that General Musharraf really is the President of Pakistan, and to treat him as if he is the President of Pakistan is an insult to the hundreds of millions of Pakistanis living under the iron heel of his dictatorship, not to mention the Pakistanis living as citizens in Britain, many of whom have traditionally voted for the Minister's party. So I hope that he will bear that in mind when he answers this. General Musharraf is a tyrant who is about to fall. I urge this Minister not to do as the now Lord Owen did in backing the tyrant Shah of Persia until the last moments before he fell. It was because of Western support for tyrants like the Shah until the last moments that the radicalization of such as the Islamic Revolution in Iran took place. My last words are these, Madam Deputy Speaker. Pakistan is a nuclear power. After Musharraf falls, no one knows who will replace him, whose finger will be on the nuclear trigger in Pakistan once Musharraf falls. The government would be doing Britain the favour that Biden and others are doing America by intervening now to distance themselves from this tyrant and to help the democratic forces come back to power in Pakistan.
Mr. Jeff Hume.
Madam Deputy Speaker, could I begin by extending the normal courtesies of the House to the Honourable Member for Bethnal Green and Bow on securing tonight's debate, which he entitled The Restoration of Democracy in Pakistan. I'm sure that everyone, including I hope the Honourable Member, will join me in condemning the recent violence in Karachi and terrorist attacks in Pakistan which have killed and injured so many people. On behalf of the United Kingdom, I extend my sympathies and condolences to those affected. But as this House is aware, Pakistan is an important friend and ally of the United Kingdom. 60 years after independence, the bilateral relationship between Pakistan and this country is as close as it has ever been. We're closely intertwined historically, culturally and politically. Over 800,000 British citizens of origins. What is perhaps less well known is that there are at least 80,000 residents in Pakistan with British nationality. About 150,000 people from each country visit the other country every year. Pakistan is at the heart of a range of key international issues, including counter-terrorism, counter-proliferation, counter-narcotics, migration and cross-cultural community relationships. These are all shared challenges which we need to tackle together. The United Kingdom is grateful for the continuing cooperation on counter-terrorism which it receives from Pakistan, and for the sacrifices which Pakistan has made in the border region with Afghanistan to prevent the Taliban and other criminal elements from crossing that border. This debate is, however, focused on the question of democracy, and I want to deal with a number of related issues in turn. First of all, the question of human rights. This government welcomes President Musharraf's commitment to promoting enlightened moderation. Recent reform of the Hudud laws was an important step forward in human rights and democracy in Pakistan. Ministers have consistently raised human rights questions with the Pakistani government, welcoming its efforts on the Women's Protection Bill, for example. Follow-up from the British government detailed a number of our human rights concerns in Pakistan and offered UK support on a range of connected issues. One of these areas was the effect of the blasphemy laws on religious minority groups. We have welcomed Pakistan's efforts to address this issue and encouraged further reform of discriminatory legislation. I am, of course, aware of the continuing problems faced by minority groups in Pakistan, such as the Christian community in the northwest frontier province. We continue to monitor closely the developments in these cases. Both bilaterally and together with our European partners, we continue to engage in dialogue with Pakistan on the issues of discriminatory legislation and the situation of minorities. Freedom of religion is a fundamental human right, and we will continue to voice our concerns to the government in Pakistan. Turning to the related question of media freedom raised by the Honourable Member, I'm aware of the new ordinance introduced on the 4th of June giving greater powers to the Pakistan Media Regulatory Authority. But this ordinance was suspended on the 6th of June. I don't think the Honourable Member mentioned that, and subsequently revoked. In response, EU heads of mission in Islamabad reaffirmed the great importance which the EU attaches to freedom of expression and freedom of the media as crucial elements for a successful democratic process, and welcomed the Government of Pakistan's decision to suspend the amendment. They expressed their confidence that further steps will be taken to safeguard a political climate in which freedom of expression and the media is respected and which is conducive to free and fair elections. Freedom of information is essential to economic and social development and stability, and we actively support the evolution of a free and fair press in Pakistan. Turning to democratic institutions, in Malta in 2005, Commonwealth heads of government welcomed the progress which Pakistan was making in restoring democracy and rebuilding democratic institutions. It is important that Pakistan continues this transition. Strengthening democratic institutions and promoting freedom of expression are vital steps in countering extremism and promoting an environment of tolerance. The United Kingdom's Department for International Development is working in partnership with Pakistan to help develop its institutions and increase the accountability of the state to its citizens. This programme has 4 dimensions: public sector reform, representative government, access to justice and citizen participation. We also support major interventions underpinning the reform process in government. An important context for DFID's work is Pakistan's devolution reform, which was announced in March 2000 by President Musharraf. A distinctive feature is that it aims to deliver justice at the doorstep, including moving beyond public safety and the recognition of basic human rights to political and administrative justice. Other interventions include support to tax administration reform, reform of the Federal Bureau of Statistics, and a package of district-level reforms in Faisalabad district. As this House is aware, when the Prime Minister visited Pakistan in November 2006, he announced a doubling of the UK's development programme for Pakistan. DFID is currently working on its new country assistance plan, which will include further support to Pakistan on good governance, institution building and empowerment. On elections, the United Kingdom looks to the Pakistan government to ensure that the forthcoming presidential and parliamentary elections are held in a free and fair manner in which it is equally possible for all political parties to participate. The government has welcomed the appointment of an independent election commissioner as an important first step towards those free and fair elections. We are supporting him and his team in their efforts to provide those free and fair elections and to strengthen the role of local election monitors. We call on the Government of Pakistan and the Election Commission to continue their work on voter registration. In January this year, DFID announced that it would be giving £3.5 million to support the electoral process in Pakistan. The money will be spent in a number of areas which are fundamental to ensuring a successful electoral process. These include voter registration, training of polling staff and party agents, voter education, and ensuring maximum citizen participation in and oversight of the electoral process. The funds will also provide support for a group of international observers to give an objective analysis of the conduct of the elections. The Honourable Member for Bethnal Green and Bow has mentioned President Musharraf's dual role as Head of State and Chief of the Army Staff. The United Kingdom remains committed to the declaration made by Commonwealth Heads of Government in Malta in 2005, to which Pakistan also agreed, that until the 2 offices of Head of State and Chief of the Army Staff are separated, the process of democratisation in Pakistan will not be irreversible. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would emphasise that the United Kingdom has a long-term commitment to Pakistan's future. We are closely linked and we share common goals: to defeat terrorism, to tackle extremism and to share a peaceful and prosperous democratic future. For our part, the government will continue to work with the Pakistani government to achieve those goals.
Order, order. The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.